Welcome to this video on health economic evaluation.
So it's not audible or
Yeah, no, it wasn't playing the video.
We're going to have a very broad look at what it is and introduce the four main types of economic evaluations. So first of all, why do we need health economic evaluations? There are many effective and worthwhile health interventions or programs that can be used to improve the health of a population. If we had a lot of money to spend, we could use it for every beneficial health program. The reality, however, is that we usually don't. If we spend all the money we have on one intervention, then we don't have any left for others. This is called an opportunity cost. Because of this, difficult decisions have to be made to ensure the limited amount of money is spent to achieve the most benefit. Health economic evaluation is a tool that helps with making those decisions. It allows us to compare two or more health interventions on the basis of their costs and outcomes. There are four main types of economic evaluations: cost minimization, cost effectiveness, cost utility, and cost-benefit analysis. They all compare costs with outcome, but do so in different ways. Let's have a look at the different types of costs first. Direct costs are costs that are directly associated with intervention. For example, the cost of medicines, the cost of equipment like X-ray machines, salaries of healthcare staff, or the cost of transport to the health center. Direct costs are the main focus of most economic evaluations. Indirect costs are costs associated with reduced productivity due to the illness or its treatment. An example is missed wages because of not working due to the illness. Intangible costs are subjective, such as pain, suffering, or grief due to the illness or treatment. These costs are quite hard to put a monetary value on. That's a look at the different types of costs. Now let's take a look at the different types of economic evaluations. The first type of economic evaluation is a cost minimization analysis. This type of analysis is used when the product or outcome is the same and what we're comparing is the cost. For example, let's say we're comparing blood pressure reducing medications that are made by different manufacturers and have different prices. In a cost minimization analysis, because the medicine is the same, we simply compare the costs. The second type of analysis is a cost effectiveness analysis. This is used when we're comparing different interventions that have a common health outcome. Examples of health outcomes are reduction in blood pressure, cancer cases avoided, kilos lost, or life years gained. These are called natural units. Let's take a look at an example. Let's say we're comparing two different interventions to reduce weight: a diet program and weight loss medication. The health outcome we're interested in is how many kilos have been lost. The diet program had a 2-kilogram weight loss and cost $300. The cost per kilo lost is $150. This is called a cost-effectiveness ratio. Let's compare this with a medication-based program that leads to a weight loss of 3 kilograms but costs $1,500. In this intervention, the cost per kilo lost is $500. So in this scenario, the diet-based program is more cost-effective compared to the medication-based program. So, a cost-effective analysis compares the cost per natural units for different interventions. But what do we do if we want to compare interventions that have different health outcomes? For this, we use a type of economic analysis called a cost-utility analysis. Let's have a look. Say we want to compare between drug therapy to reduce high blood pressure, breast screening to reduce the number of breast cancer cases, and a kidney transplant for end-stage kidney disease to improve kidney function. These are different health interventions that have different health outcomes. So, in order to compare these different interventions, we need to have a common outcome measure that can be applied to all these interventions. The measure that is most commonly used is called the Quality Adjusted Life Year, or QALY in short. Let's have a look at what a QALY is. Health interventions try to prolong a person's life by increasing the number of years a person lives, and they also try to improve the quality of those years lived. A quality-adjusted life year is a combined measure that takes into account both of these aspects. A QALY is calculated by taking the number of extra years gained as a result of the intervention and multiplying it by the quality of life of those extra years. Quality of life is graded from 0 to 1, from 0 being the worst possible health state and 1 being the best possible health state. There are many different ways to determine these gradings. They usually involve asking people how they rate their quality of life. A variety of tools can be used for this. Measures such as QALYs are called health utility measures because they measure an individual's preference for different health outcomes. Let's have a look at an example. If an intervention leads to a person living 5 years in perfect health, a health utility of 1, then the number of QALYs gained as a result of this intervention is 5. Similarly, if an intervention leads to a person living an extra 5 years, but with a quality of life of 0.2, then the QALYs gained as a result of that intervention is 1. Now that we have a common outcome measure, a QALY, we can compare the cost per QALY across different interventions. So, a cost-utility analysis compares the cost of a utility measure, such as a QALY, for different interventions. Now let's have a look at cost-benefit analysis. This type of analysis measures both the cost and outcome in monetary terms. A cost-benefit analysis tries to account for all costs and all benefits, direct, indirect, and intangible. To calculate benefits, a variety of tools can be used. The willingness to pay method determines the value that people attach to health outcomes. For example, by asking people how much they're willing to pay to have the benefits of the treatment or to avoid the costs of illness. The human capital method places a monetary value on the person's life. The value is based on the loss or gain of income due to the illness. Although this type of evaluation is comprehensive, the data requirements can be quite high, and there are methodological issues when it comes to determining a value on life and productivity. In reality, economic evaluations can be quite complex to do and require various statistical calculations and adjustments, such as stratification, to adjust for different patient groups that might benefit differently from the interventions, discounting, to account for cost and benefits that occur at different times, and sensitivity analysis, to adjust for uncertainties in the data. And that's a very quick introduction to health economic evaluation, an important tool that helps us make decisions about allocating health resources. We've had a look at what it is and the different types of economic evaluations.
So I think that video is a pretty good summary of the health economic evaluations, putting all 4 of the different types together and kind of explaining them in a way that I think is very clear, and hopefully that's a little easier for everyone to understand. Any questions on anything in the video? Okay.
So my question is, what is the common health economics evaluation that is considered in Canada healthcare?
I would say all of them are used, so it would really depend on what what intervention you're looking at in terms of evaluating it, because you can see that if you want to compare different interventions, you would use you would have to use a different one versus if you're comparing similar interventions. So think of the blood pressure medications. If you're just looking at one intervention and what's the cost of it versus one of the big challenges I would say within healthcare in general is we only have a certain pot of money available to fund any particular program or services, and that's I think the important piece around health economics is to help us have a better understanding of where and how we should be spending our money and the true benefits of spending money in a particular area. So I think all of them have their utility. It really depends on what intervention or program you're providing.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Nurali?
Yes, sir. I was having question about the cost utility. It shows that it has a different intervention. It is comparison between different interventions, right? So when will it be useful in the project we have taken in, like in the particular project?
Right. So if depending on your project, and again, this may be something probably you're looking at more doing through a literature search in terms of where they may have done the calculations, because they can be quite complex, and I don't they're not expected as part of the project, but you certainly may find them in some of the research related to the program you're providing, where it compared two different types of programs and use sort of that utility of a quality in terms of quality of life gain through this intervention versus another intervention.
So
So if
it's not a part of project, but it is done before the starting of project.
right, it would be usually it's through research, or will be done sort of as you are where you do the intervention like as a trial somewhere, and you do that economic evaluation. A lot of times where within healthcare, a lot of times it's about finding sort of the evidence-based practice that's being used from an area, and a lot of times you will find the economic evaluation or the economic component within the research to help make your case. It's also something as you're creating a program, looking at what indicators do you want to look at improving so that you can do the evaluation, so you can show that the program is continuing to be able to meet that need, right? Because you have to make a budget around the program will cost X dollars, and then what is your expected outcome, right? How will you monitor that outcome? What piece do you want to look at, which would be very dependent on your project, from like reducing readmission rate to hospital, right? There can be costs associated when someone comes back to hospital. Like those are all kind of pieces that through your literature review and through sort of searching what's out there, you can find sort of some values on that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. 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 So this is what we're sort of talking today about is project charter, as well as sort of a work breakdown structure, right? So there's these 5 components that are within a project charter, right? So the important part is sort of, looking at confirming and developing goals and objectives. So we want to consider each objective and how will it be achieved? What needs to be done to achieve it? We need to have a clear action plan, and that's kind of where the second half of this lecture we'll get into is sort of that work breakdown around what are the steps involved in being able to kind of meet those objectives, right? We want to make sure that it's sort of a stage will it be a staged implementation? So will you start with, step 1 and then 2 to 3, kind of in a very stepwise staged approach? Or will it sort of be a single implementation phase where, you will sort of, it all comes on live and you just go live versus kind of rolling it out? So thinking of projects that, rolling out across an organization. So I'll use sort of my hospital as an example. Are you going to sort of slowly roll it out, start at, say, the medicine unit, and then roll it out to cardiology, and then roll it out to respirology? That would sort of be a staged approach, versus just rolling it out across an organization would certainly be a single implementation phase, right? The other piece is looking at, what are the standards, policies, guidelines, right? So within the organization, if you're looking at a project that's going to impact, regulated health professions, which a lot of sort of healthcare sort of projects, involve, nurses, doctors, pharmacists, what are their standards, right? What are their colleges saying if you're, and how do you align that and make sure it's aligned within the project, right? For example, if we're looking at trying to improve an outcome of wait times, we need to collect data to identify what are the current patterns, right? So again, this is connecting to the pieces where we talked about the needs assessment and literature review, is that we really need to sort of understand what's going on, right? We need to identify the specific patterns that may affect outcomes. So how are things sort of going along? We need to develop and test a protocol, right? So a lot of times as we do our needs assessment, as well as have our evaluate, have a better picture of what's going on, we begin developing sort of that plan, right? But we want to sort of develop something and test it to see, is it achieving the goal that we think that we want, right? As well as we want to have sort of a specific evaluation for the protocol. So whatever we're implementing, we want to make sure that we also set up, how are we going to evaluate? How are we going to know what we set up to do, what our goal was, what our objective was how will we know that we achieved those pieces, right? A lot of these we've talked about within sort of even the project proposal around, identifying our key stakeholders, deliverables, and scope, right? So scope is important because that keeps us online in terms of what is within our project and what are pieces without, on the outside of our project that aren't going to be impacted, right? Okay. I'll stop sharing that. Have a video that will sort of walk us through what a project charter is. Okay.
Teams in which nobody really knows the purpose of the project or what needs to be accomplished by the team. What's needed is a project charter, and a Lean Six Sigma project is no different. In this movie, I will explain the importance of the project charter and its significance for every team member throughout the whole project journey. The project charter is a document that provides direction and focus to the project team. It is management's authorization for the project. It spells out the purpose, goals, and scope of the project, and management's assignment of resources to the project. In short, it provides legitimacy to the project's existence. While there may be variations from company to company as to how much is included in the project charter, here are the key elements of a project charter for Lean Six Sigma projects. Project name. The project is given a name by the champion and project leader. Problem or opportunity statement. This statement describes the opportunity or problem to be addressed. A good problem statement is one that describes a specific, recurring chronic problem that is measurable, relevant, and significant to the organization. As a team member, you should help your project leader verify and confirm that it is indeed a real problem or worthwhile improvement opportunity. Goal statement. This states the goal or target result to be accomplished and by when. The goal statement should improve what was described in the problem statement. The goal should be SMART, S-M-A-R-T, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. All team members should review the goal statement and use the team's collective expertise and experience to ensure that the goal is attainable within the time frame of the project. As a rule of thumb, the duration of Lean Six Sigma projects should not exceed 6 months. Key metric. The key metric is the metric or performance measure to be improved. This is the project Y in Y equals f of x, or Y is a function of x. Expected benefits. These are the expected operational and financial benefits from the project. For financial benefits, calculations of COPQ, or cost of poor quality reduction, is used to quantify the cost of waste targeted by the project. Expressing the project benefits in monetary terms is important because that's the language of management. And the language of management is money. Project scope states what's in scope and, equally important, what's out of scope. This provides project boundaries and helps prevent scope creep. Milestones shows the checkpoint dates for project progress and the expected completion date. The completion date of each phase of DMAIC are the usual milestones. Signatures. Typically, there are 3 signatures: project leader, someone from finance, and the champion. The project leader agrees to take on the project. The finance person validates the expected financial benefits, and the champion approves the launch of the project as described in the project charter. Now, armed with the project charter, the project team has a clear mandate from management to execute the project. What does SIPOC?
So I think that provides a very clear overview. I also think it highlights a number of important points that we've also discussed sort of within our course so far. So, when he talks about, aligning it with sort of, the value of the organization, right? So that's getting it back to our discussion around strategy. We want to make sure that our project is aligned with what, as an organization and as the senior leadership team sees it, that there is value in it, it's aligned with the direction that the organization is heading in, and that we have that alignment. I think the other very important piece within that video that is kind of discussed is the idea around sort of cost, right? Cost benefit to the organization, money saved. When we look at projects of any scope, the cost of them is a very, very important component, right? Healthcare, particularly, is very constrained in terms of the amount of finances available to fund projects. And so when we think about projects, we need to think about where that funding will come from. So even as you know, looking at the project, as you're looking at the budget, begin thinking about where the money will come from. Are there opportunities where you're going to realign a certain project within an organization? So if currently it costs you know, X dollars to do it this way, we're going to change it, and what we're deciding on is actually going to save us money, right? So transferring those funds over by changing it, right? So just begin sort of thinking about it and looking for those alignment piece, right? What is going to be beneficial on it. And certainly talking, you know, all management related to funds, because at the end of the day, it's about sort of the benefit of a project. What does it provide us as an organization? Certainly even within healthcare, a lot of times projects, even if they are costing the same, if they have a greater benefit or improvement of quality of life and aspects like that, there's still an opportunity for funding those. Any question on that?
So, sir, it's like an group proposal, right? It's
Yeah,
similar to.
yeah. So the project charter kind of comes in. So the proposal is where you have an idea. You've done sort of some of that research and needs analysis, say, hey, we have this need. This is sort of the summary of the project. So you're putting it forward to kind of approval. Once it's kind of been approved, that's when you start getting into the work, which is when sort of building the project charter, where you get into more detail in terms of, so it kind of builds off of the project proposal, right? So project charter is, I have the project, they've said that I can go, and then it's making sure you have all of the components that we talked here around, right? So having, you know, developing our goals and objectives, right? Can sort of confirming the project, which would be sort of that problem statement that you're going to address, outlining the strategies and approaches. So how are we going to do those things? Defining the scope. So this is looking at what's in and what's out of your project. What will you tackle? What won't you? What will you sort of change? And then the deliverables, right? How are you going to meet those things? So those are the sort of mentioned in the video around sort of the milestones, right? So looking at, you know, being very sort of specific, you know, the SMART goals, right? Being specific, measurable, time-bound, realistic, having all those components in those deliverables. You know, I will deliver X by this time, right? And then this time. And we'll see as we sort of work through it in terms of the work breakdown of how it kind of how you move the project charter to breaking it down even into smaller chunks within the work plan, because the project charter is more of a higher level picture of your project, sort of high level. What are the key deliverables? Who are the key stakeholders in the scope of the project? So it really builds off of that project proposal.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do is I'll break you out so we'll probably just use random groups and not the full groups, because I think we're missing some people today. So I'll break everyone here into groups 3 or 4. And what I want you guys to do is to work on basically designing a project charter. So here is the situation. So in a recent news article, comment on the increased rates of depression in long-term care homes. You work at a local mental health organization that has asked you to take the lead of the project designed to improve the health of clients in long-term care. Develop a project charter, giving one example of each component. So obviously, you don't have time to get into the details. So if you just go through all the pieces on slide, I think it's slide 3 of the deck, that kind of lists all of so sort of looking at these and kind of write, what is the project's problem statement? What's the goal of your project, right? Write one objective. Maybe think about outlining one strategy or approach you're going to take, right? Think about what scope here, right? Looking at an example of what's the scope of this project, what would potentially be a deliverable, and then identify some of the key stakeholders there. So I'll give you guys a fair bit of time to do this. I'll put you into the groups. So this is our example you're gonna work on. So increased rates of depression in long-term care home. You work for a mental health organization that's been asked to take the lead on the project design to improve health of clients in long-term care. So just looking at developing the project charter for that. I'm gonna stop sharing. Any questions on that before I open up breakout rooms for everyone? So just one, if you look at the project charter components and then one item sort of underneath each one, what we'll do is we'll start with, I can give you guys sort of 20 minutes to do it. Then we'll come back. We'll see how everyone's making out. We'll take maybe a break at that point, and then we'll see if we need more time. Dura?
Is this supposed to go in assignment?
No, this is just to get practice working in. So this isn't to be turned in any way. We'll talk about it here in class. This is just to work on filling in the components of a project charter prior to doing your assignment. Okay, so how many of us are here? I'm going to open up 7 rooms and you'll automatically be assigned. So it should be 3 in each room if my math is correct. Okay.
Okay, ready? Ready for the project? Hello, anyone?
Hello.
Okay, ready for the project?
Dhruv, you will speak on our behalf.
Sure.
Okay.
So here is the project charter.
Okay.
What can we
What are
do
we
in depression of
actually?
local health care home? First, what is our goal and objective? Goals and objective. What should be?
Goals. Mm, no, sorry. Mm,
This is our project, and we are going to make our project based on this component.
Confirming or developing goals. What is our project?
This one is our project.
A recent article commented on the increased rates of depression. We work with a local project that have increased rate of depression.
It's an increased rate of depression in care homes. So what should be our goal for depression in care homes?
I guess one of the goal that we can have is right now there are some places or there are some like mental asylums which have basically they say it those care puppies or something like that uh, small which are the like small dogs which help you overcome your depression phase.
Okay, so that can come under strategies and approaches.
Yeah, sorry, strategies, yeah.
Yeah, but what should be our goal? To study it,
Mm,
to decrease it.
obviously decrease it
Obviously,
and
the
to
goal is to identify it, no? Means main
yeah
reason behind the
yeah
depression, whether it is like the family separation, anxiety, or it is because of the age, environmental factor. Like there are
yeah
many
so
things which
knowing the
contribute.
basically knowing what is the etiology or the cause of that particular
Long
depression.
term.
Okay, so first goal we found to find out the causes. Second,
Mm,
what should be the second goal? Okay, whatever it is. The first one is to study the cause. Second is outlining strategies and approaches. First one is puppy. What is the second approach?
their depression, it may be isolation, or it could be because of loss or grief of a loved ones. Like they can trigger
So
it.
sorry, I'm not paying that proper attention. Yeah, but I guess that is included in the causes.
Yes, that is included in
Causes,
cause.
causes.
You have to come out with solutions. So that could be our strategy and approaches.
Mm,
Organizing
confirm.
events, make them be more socialized, make them happy, and if needed, special counseling can be arranged. So that should be our strategy and approaches. What are the scopes? Means limitations and to do and not to do. What should we do in this case and not? Scopes like we can study the cause and we can work on that. We can initiate new research on that.
Can you repeat the question again? That all, I guess that all is included in the causes. That if you know the cause, you can work on it more.
What are the deliverables?
What is deliverables though? I didn't actually pay attention to the lecture, what Ian was
Okay,
saying.
by this project, what we are going to deliver to the society or the local health home,
Okay.
care homes.
Hmm. Uh,
Let me Google it.
We are making a better health of their means older home system, local home. We are improving their
Um,
mental health. We are
hmm.
providing an opportunity to student, especially who works in mental health. So these are our deliverables. So who are the stakeholders? Province or regional, or it should be a community, right?
yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Correct.
We have done our project. Simple.
Okay.
Okay, now who is going to speak?
You.
Yes, you.
Okay, sure.
Like you can speak if you are stuck somewhere. We both will add it up.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we'll search for more points so that and see. I guess we had 7 groups, so most of the points will be covered by the rest of the students. So if
It's
anything is
okay.
there,
It's okay. If you can't, I'll handle.
means we can just gist it up. Like we'll not make it so lengthy and not explain it. We can just highlight the main points.
Sure.
Like
That would be nice.
short and simple
Oh,
instead of complex. So I also said about some percentage, like regarding the I don't maybe
yeah,
some
you can
percentage.
search on Google, provide some numbers.
Okay,
Do you want to share the screen?
no, not only data as of now. I'm searching it. If I get it, I'll tell you.
Oh,
Also, I was thinking if like regarding the strategies and everything, like if it is because of depression, we can obviously go and like arrange some counseling. But apart from that, gaming and like what and all strategies we can include means apart from counseling, like individual support is there,
yeah.
like recruiting people and everything for them.
We
Or
can
but it
organize
will be
events across local which homes?
yeah, but what kind of event? Like it could be
Uh,
means a birthday
anything on
celebration
any
for
festival or any special occasion like Thanksgiving. We can organize that,
okay.
like Good Friday, whatever it is, but make them happy.
Okay, but apart from this, like this would be festive. But apart from any other festive, like regular basis, we can arrange. Like we can also plan a picnic for them to nearby
Of course,
park.
we can celebrate their birthdays.
Yeah, we can celebrate their birthdays. We can just plan a takeout or anything. Like, but obviously, it will all come to budget.
Um, we can also do that animal therapy. It is very much in thing right now.
Hmm.
Sorry, I didn't get the word. Which therapy?
Animal therapy.
Animal.
Animal
Yeah.
therapy. I also agree with it. Animal therapy helps a lot.
See, you have lots of idea. You just have to start. You just have to get a start.
Hmm.
I guess we can include some. Sometimes we can give medications if it increases above certain level. Like
Of
it is
course,
not controllable by any staff people, then we can give them some temporary medication.
of course, of course. It's just not only the therapy, but it has to be medicines as well.
Yeah.
So discussion is over. I think 10 minutes is sufficient. Team. What have you done in your self-care activity? Have you visited any park, Victoria Park or anything else? Here, Kritika,
Yeah.
been anywhere? Which
Where?
some nice
Sorry?
place? Some nice place?
No,
No,
no.
I've been stuck in doing all the assignments.
Same here.
It's
Even
Wow.
like a lot.
I was not well yesterday. I just came and I slept.
Oh, how are you now?
I'm good. I'm good.
Great.
Just came home. I was not feeling. Why are you recording?
College internet is slow and disconnecting frequently.
Hmm.
You are in college?
Yeah, I am in college. See?
Oh. The message is going.
Hey everyone, just checking in to see how you're doing and if you had any questions about the sort of group exercise.
No, sir. We are done.
You're done? Okay, perfect. All right, I think everyone's back at the moment. So what we'll do is we will take a why don't we come back at 5:25? We'll take a 15-minute break. And then we will take up we'll have a bit of discussion on the exercise, and then we'll finish off the lecture, and that'll be good. So I'll see everyone back at 5:25. So before we kind of move on with the rest of the lecture, and I just wanted to review a couple things. I was popping in and out. I think I got to everyone's group. So just want to have a bit of discussion around scope. I know was a common question, and then some questions around stakeholders. So what I've said to a couple of groups I was in who had questions around scope is just looking at it's really the focus of what is the project actually going to be impacting. So in this example, the scope of the project is only those patients, individuals, primarily seniors, living within long-term care. Those are the only part that our program that we're going to develop to target depression is going to focus on. It's not focusing on community seniors or children. That's not the focus. So it kind of provides sort of rails or guardrails around this is all that we're kind of focusing in on with this project. Because what can happen, and when we think about developing the project, is like depending on the voice of those people around, may think about, oh well, depression in the community seniors is also an important topic. We should develop a program for that. And so what happens is you can get project creep, where your project keeps growing because it's not sort of focused. So keeping it written down, all those that kind of agreed to it, is this is all we're focusing in on. And then the other piece is looking at the stakeholders, right? It's important to recognize there's not only the stakeholders within, in this case, within the long-term care, but always remembering the stakeholders outside as well that we need to think about, right? From the community mental health agency that you're representing is also a stakeholder. And within there are various levels of stakeholders. So thinking of the long-term care home, not only are there patients, there's staff, there's potential, for the company that actually owns and runs the long-term care home. All of those would be sort of stakeholders involved in the project. Long-term care within Ontario is very highly regulated, so there may be a ministry component as well related to being a stakeholder, potential funding sources, right? And I think one of the key pieces is around any sort of project is thinking about, when we think about our deliverables of what are we going to deliver, that's also a conversation around how are we going to measure what we deliver. So we need to connect those two together. So, we are designing, in this case, a project to target depression in long-term care. How will we know that we improved the depression of long-term care in these community long-term care homes, right? So part of it is, well, what is the current level of depression within long-term care, right? Looking at what tools do we use to measure depression within long-term care, and then doing a post scale potentially, right? Like those are all options, but thinking the key thing is thinking about how are you going to know that what you delivered did what it said it should do. Because one thing that we have to look at in healthcare is how do we use our limited resources, how we work together. There's a big push within Ontario to integrate teams across, so we're not in silos, sort of hospital, community, long-term care, that we're kind of integrated together. But part of integration provides us the ability to share information and share successes. So if there's a good project that gets developed here that addresses depression in those long-term care homes in this particular community, we want to know how it was designed, how we achieved it, so that possibly we can look at sharing it and scaling it to other long-term care homes as well and other projects. We always want to know, and then going back to the economic piece, we want to make sure that the money we spent on this project to address depression in seniors was successful and was actually money well spent and provided good value. Any questions on that? Okay. We're now going to move on to looking at the work breakdown structure. Yeah. All right. So what is a work breakdown structure, right? So this is really, it's another tool within our project management tool bag that we use. And it really helps, really clearly identify the activities and tasks of a project that need to be defined and broken down into sort of those manageable chunks, right? So we do have our key deliverables, but in pretty much all cases, I would say, there's going to be a lot of other tasks that need to be done in order for us to reach the full milestone, right? So it's kind of, we start with the goals and the strategies and the deliverables. We begin breaking them down into subheadings. We can thereby, as we break them down and you work backwards of, this is what I want to achieve. In order to achieve that, I need to do this and this and this and this and this. We can begin finding the components of what do we need to start with in order to actually move this project forward, right? It helps us identify what needs to happen first. What components do we need to make up that activity, and what time is required for each task, right? So it begins to give us that clear picture of the sequence of events that things need to be done in. So here you can see you have the large project with 3 deliverables, as well as, what activities are required within each component, right? So within our deliverable 1, we have activity 1.1 and activity 1.2. Then you can even see we go further. So even for activity 1.1, there's 1.111 and then 112. So it begins to it creates this hierarchical structure of what needs to be done first. Right? If we look at even deliverable 4, there's even sort of subtasks before even we get in tasks, right? So it really gets down to the detailed components that makes up the project as a whole, right? It divides the project into components. Each individual deliverable will require a number of activities that are required that need to be conducted, right? And then we know that each activity will also have a set of tasks. So you can see that constructing a work breakdown, right? So there's 2 approaches to doing this. We can work from the top down, deliverables to meaningful activities to specific tasks, or we can go from specific tasks to meaningful activities to bottom up. There's not really, in terms of a best approach, it really, we generally need a requirement of both within making work breakdown structures, right? That we need some components to deliverables, but sometimes it's looking at specific tasks may lead us to those activities, which then lead us to the deliverables. So I have another video. So okay.
The work breakdown structure is one of the truly fundamental tools of project management. But how do you create one? If you're managing a predictive or a hybrid project of any significant scale, then there's a good chance you'll need a work breakdown structure. So in this video, we're going to look at how you create one. And we'll do it using the globally more common approach of breaking down the project into products or deliverables. And from that, identify the activities. Now, it's worth mentioning that in the UK, where I come from, I was originally taught that a work breakdown structure broke down the work, the activities, the tasks of the project. And from that, you can determine what the products need to be and link them to the tasks. But American project managers and the Project Management Institute teach the alternative approach. Neither is better nor worse than the other, in my opinion. Both have their advantages and their adherents. But because it is the more common approach, and some would argue maybe the more rigorous approach on technical projects, we're going to break down the project into its deliverables to create a work breakdown structure and then use that to identify the tasks that need to be carried out for future planning and scheduling. So because our work breakdown structure is going to break the project into deliverables, let's start by understanding what they are. Deliverables are products or capabilities or results. For example, a thing, a process, or an event are deliverables. You could argue that a deliverable is anything tangible that you can experience. So, to create a work breakdown structure, all we need is a hierarchical decomposition of all of the deliverables. And because it's all of the deliverables, it means that if it's not on the work breakdown structure, it won't get done in your project. So it's absolutely crucial that we do it in a systematic way so we don't miss anything. Now, you'll find a lot of variance on the process that I'm going to give you, and I don't claim that my approach is any more nor less correct than any others. But what I do want to focus on is being crystal clear about the levels within a work breakdown structure. So at the top of our work breakdown structure, we have level 0. This is the product, deliverable, or project that we are going to create through the project. It is the totality of the entire deliverable set and therefore the project itself. Level 1 is what I am going to call the key line, and this is not a commonly used term. The key line is our organizing principle for the work breakdown structure. It sets up the categories by which we're going to decompose our deliverables. Now, sometimes the key line is nothing more complex than a few deliverables, the biggest deliverables of all. In other circumstances, it may be the stages or phases of the project. It may be work streams that are thematic in nature, like technology, people, and processes. Or it could even be a geographic set of divisions. However, once you set up the principle against which you're going to decompose the entire project, that gives you level 1, your key line, and therefore sets out the titles for the major work streams for your project. At level 2, we have the major deliverables that sit within each element of the key line. Not all of these deliverables need to be an end deliverable. An end deliverable is something you want. It is there because that is what the project has been created to build. End deliverables are often defined by the goal and the objectives of the project. The alternative is interim deliverables, and you may see some at level 2, but they are more likely to appear at level 3. But while we're at level 2, the key here is to use expertise, the experts on your project team, to identify the major end deliverables and the major interim deliverables. So at level 3, we will see components of the major deliverables, and we will see a large number of interim deliverables. Interim deliverables are things we need to create in the project in order to help us get to the end deliverables. Typically, they include things like prototypes and tests. They include project management artifacts like plans and stakeholder lists. They include things like test scripts and maybe even components that we don't need, but that will find their way into the end deliverables. So to create level 3, we need to brainstorm the sub-deliverables and the interim deliverables for each of the items at level 2. Remember, because if it's not on the work breakdown structure, it won't get done.
Before we were using Monday.com, our team was drowning in work. Our days used to split between work and managing work, but Monday...
Be sure to include project management process deliverables, the artifact of project management. And one way to do that, of course, and my preference, is to set up a project management heading at the key line level. That way, you can decompose your approach to project management into a number of major and then sub-deliverables at levels 2 and 3. Remember, everything in this workstream will, of course, be an interim deliverable by definition, because it's not something we want as an end product, it is something we need to create along the way. If you do create this project level workstream at the key line, typical names would be project management or project integration. Level 4 and maybe levels below this further decompose the sub-deliverables and the interim deliverables into smaller and smaller deliverables to the point where each deliverable is a unique and fully constrained thing in itself. Make sure that these are structured into logical hierarchies and, as far as possible, sequenced in a logical order. And of course, it may not look tidy, but it is okay to go to different depths, different numbers of levels at different parts of the work breakdown structure, because your work breakdown structure should be determined by the work that needs to be done, not by some platonic ideal of a perfect, neat work breakdown structure. The next thing to do is to document your work breakdown structure. We start by creating a work breakdown structure index. We number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on across the key line. Then, starting with the first element, we look at the sub-deliverables on line 2, and we number them 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so on. Every item on your work breakdown structure will have an index number in that format. And that format should look very familiar to you, because it is very easy to create a work breakdown structure using a simple word processing package like Word or Pages. You have a number of ways that you can present this. You can present it as a hierarchical list, or as a tree diagram, which is commonly presented as, particularly in a training context, but for a large project is rarely practical. Or you can create a work breakdown structure dictionary, a WBS dictionary, which lists every product with its reference number, but now you can add additional information. You can add descriptions, standards, specifications, resources, costs, durations, and anything else that is relevant to you to create your work breakdown structure dictionary. The final step is to present your work breakdown structure to your project sponsor, to your client, to your boss, to your steering group, and indeed to your stakeholders. Get their feedback on it and refine it before producing your final version. Your completed work breakdown structure is now a full and formal statement of the complete scope of your project. Before we turn our deliverable-based work breakdown structure into an activity tool that we can use for planning and scheduling, let's look at some good practices in creating your work breakdown structure. First, make sure the labels of each item in your work breakdown structure provide a clear and unambiguous description of what that deliverable is. Secondly, apply the MEIS principle. Is your work breakdown structure mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive? What do we mean by mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive? By mutually exclusive, we mean there are no overlaps, that the same deliverable doesn't appear twice or more times in different parts of the work breakdown structure. And by collectively exhaustive, we mean that any deliverable at a level can be completely specified by all the sub-deliverables below it. That is to say that the entire work breakdown structure does indeed represent the complete project and everything you need, both your end deliverables, the components of the end deliverables, and your interim deliverables. Now, it's worth noting that on many modern projects where they are moving from a purely predictive to a more hybrid style of project management, it isn't always going to be appropriate to try to complete the work breakdown structure at the start of the project. The project may evolve and you may need to add elements or indeed delete elements from your work breakdown structure as you go through the project, discover new requirements, learn more about the project you're doing.
This is Dave, head of marketing at a ketchup company about to use Grammarly to handle a tight deadline.
So whilst I grew up in a predictive environment where we would create a full work breakdown structure before moving out of the planning phase into delivery, that isn't necessarily going to be your approach in every project. Now you've got your deliverable-based work breakdown structure, how do you understand the tasks, the activities it takes to create your project? The first step is to create work packages, to identify deliverables or groups of deliverables that need to be created together, and set up work packages that collectively develop those deliverables. Typically, you will have one work package create one deliverable, but that won't always be the case. And also, typically you'll allocate the task of creating this work package decomposition to your workstream leaders who understand the tasks and the deliverables within their workstream better than you do. Once they've created the work packages, they will decompose those into the individual activities that need to be done. These can be then arranged into logical sequences, and you can estimate time and resources against them, and indeed budget for them. And that's the third step. Planning is about taking the sequence of activities that you identified, taking the estimates of how much work it takes to deliver them and the duration of those activities, and putting them into a schedule and building a budget. So from a work breakdown structure, you can determine the dependencies, estimate durations, allocate resources into those tasks, and therefore estimate costs. So now I hope you can see why I describe the work breakdown structure as a fundamental project management tool. It's the tool that opens up the way and connects with so many other project management artifacts. The work breakdown structure is a scoping and scope management tool. It's a planning tool. It's a resource allocation and resource management tool. It's also the basis for detailed risk identification, and it's therefore a tool for governance. And because of that, it becomes a communication tool and a tool to help you with reporting on project status and progress. It can also, by attaching specifications to the work breakdown structure dictionary, be a quality management tool. And finally, very often it is the basis for integrating all of the other project management tools.
So you can see how important component of the work breakdown structure is, right? It provides so much information to our project that we're delivering. It provides opportunities, like you said, to report on status, risk. It provides everything. So it's a very important tool within project management, and probably one of the most important tools. All right. Just conscious of time. We'll start this topic and we'll finish it tomorrow. I'm just conscious of the time that we have here. I don't think I'll be able to get through the whole piece. So you can see within the work breakdown structure, one of the important components is beginning to look at how to estimate the time of all those tasks, right? In terms of how long will it take. So time estimation is an important part of project management and developing a project. So each task for each of the work breakdown structures, we should have a time associated with that, right? So the one of those rules is looking at the 80-hour rule that basically says that no single activity or group of activities should require more than 2 weeks or 80 hours of work. So that's the general rule that can be used to sort of estimating times for things, but the 80-hour rule may not always apply. It depends. Just the important part is that we want to make sure that activities can be completed between meetings so progress is clear. So in terms of setting up your, you have your projects, you have your deliverables, you have your meeting check-in where you're kind of monitoring the progress of your project. So between your meetings to sort of check progress, you want to make sure that activities can be completed within that time. So if generally a lot of times meetings are sort of set at that 2-week or that 80-hour rule, but you just don't want to make sure that your meetings are set so you can actually monitor the progress, or else it becomes very challenging to keep things on time and moving along, right? You must consider sort of the time, the cost, the quality together when considering time estimates. Time estimates, you can kind of come up with them in a variety of different ways. So you can have brainstorming sessions with sort of everyone around. You can kind of look at second opinions from people that have done maybe similar projects in terms of how long it's taken them to do that, as well as, trialing and revising time estimations, right? So sometimes within the project, you may have to look at refining some of those timelines that you estimate, as they may not sort of meet all your requirements, so you can kind of adjust them as well. But the 80-hour rule can give you a rough idea to start with, and then sort of checking in with those individuals. So here are some of the challenges of estimating times, right? So some tasks require specialized skills and expertise. Non-experts can have a difficult time sort of predicting how long it will take to do a specific task, or may underestimate the complexity of a specific task, right? Estimating time takes time. So it actually, it's kind of funny, but it takes time to estimate time, right? We need to actually think about these tasks, check in, brainstorm, right? Sometimes we think it's okay to skip this step because of how time consuming it might be, but it's an important component to help us try to figure out the length of time a project will actually take, right? Because with that work breakdown structure, each of those activities, interim deliverables, all those pieces are going to have timelines, which will give you the overall idea. And if you think back to sort of using the Gantt chart to kind of map out those activities over time, it gives us an idea of what needs to be done and how long, right? Senior manager, product staff may disagree on expectations and quality of the requirements, right? So we need to consider time, cost, and quality together, right? Those components, because sometimes we may have to look at what component will go, but we have to look at the time, the cost, and the quality around that, right? Senior managers may be more focused on cost versus employees on quality, or vice versa. Quality can increase time requirements and costs, which can be received as unappealing at times, but it's not always necessary, right? So you do always keep in mind to look at time, cost, and quality together. Lack of support from management, stakeholders, planning process. So again, if we haven't engaged our stakeholders and they're not clear around those time estimations for the project, we need to make sure, right, that they're engaged in the beginning to kind of sort of navigate that challenge, if you will, of that lack of support, making them need to have clear understanding of how important it is to have time estimations on it. Financial constraints, we've talked, I think, throughout this course about this, right? Unable to fund planning time might be a challenge. Budget cuts as well. So there could be financial restraints within estimating time that impacts how long it takes to do things and our ability to kind of estimate our time. Overestimating productivity of project staff, right? So we need to consider both productive and non-productive time. Standard productive rate, 56 to 80%. So we need to take that into account when we're estimating time. I kind of mentioned this, right? So a Gantt chart, like we talked about in one of our earlier lectures, I think it might have been week 2, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a commonly used method of presenting timelines and tasks of projects, and also charting the actual progress of where we are on those lines, right? It plots activities in the rows against the timeline in the columns, thus showing us the relationship between them. So this image we had from our earlier lecture. So you can see here you have all of your tasks, you have the exact duration, but you see how these tasks fit into within this time. And you can also see between conduct survey and write a report, right? There's components that are happening concurrently. You're writing your structure and outline at the same time as you're kind of working on you're finishing off your literature review. So you can see how pieces kind of integrate together within this, right? You're going to prepare your questionnaire and plot your questionnaire. You're beginning to write your first draft, right? So you can see how the different tasks and those subtasks within it all fit together within your project that, is going to run from sort of April through to July, right? You can see how pieces overlap. It's quite a good visual representation on it. And then you can also chart what's been done. And it can also help you if there's certain components, certain tasks that are required to be completed before you can move on. You can see how that might impact your ability to deliver that project. So I'm going to end there, given time. Any questions from anyone at this point about what we covered today? Okay. So tomorrow, like I said, we'll do a review for the quiz. So I encourage everyone to kind of look through your slides. If you have questions or topics that you would like to kind of have addressed or covered, bring those to class tomorrow and we can review them. I'll do a bit of a review as well on some of the things we've covered up till today, as well as we will look at the actual rubric for the assignment that will need to be turned in, and I'll be able to answer any questions you may have. All right, any questions before we go? All right, I will see everyone tomorrow morning. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Have a nice day.